Over the course of just a few years, the most powerful centers of influence in Iran began to disappear. Not suddenly, and not through a single defining event, but through developments unfolding over time. Military leaders, political figures, and individuals once seen as part of the system's future gradually faded from the scene. What we are witnessing does not appear as isolated incidents, but as a pattern quietly taking shape. In situations like this, the story is not in the event itself, but in its repetition, its structure, and its timing. And when losses begin to follow the same direction, the real questions start to emerge. The shift began in 2020, when Qasem Soleimani was killed, one of the most influential figures in shaping Iran's regional reach. He was not simply a military commander, but a central connector, linking a vast network of actors across the region. As described in many international relations studies, he was more than an operational leader. He was the architect of an entire regional influence system. A figure who moved across multiple fronts, reshaping balances of power both outside and within Iran. His absence was not merely a tactical loss, but a structural vacuum within a complex web of relationships and influence, one that is difficult to replace quickly. After that, the pattern did not stop. Targeted actions continued, taking on different forms. Sometimes direct, sometimes indirect. They reached individuals tied to the security apparatus, the scientific community, and the nuclear program. Names that may not be widely recognized by the public, yet represent part of the system's backbone. Then in 2024, Ebrahim Raisi died in an incident that carried significant political weight. A president widely seen as a leading figure for the next phase, and a potential continuation of leadership. His presence was not merely symbolic, but a realistic possibility within the succession equation. When these events are placed side by side, something different begins to emerge. The result is not just the loss of individuals, but a gradual removal of specific centers of gravity within the system. This aligns with elite theory literature, such as the logic of political survival, which demonstrates how changes in key positions can reshape an entire system, even without formal structural change. With each absence, the balance of power shifts. Not abruptly, but cumulatively. The range of options narrows, and priorities within decision-making circles begin to reorganize. In complex systems, vacuums do not last. They are filled quickly. But the real question is not who fills the vacuum, but how, and why now. As options narrow and certain figures recede, one name begins to surface more frequently across analysis: Mujtaba Khamenei. A figure who has remained largely out of the public spotlight, yet never far from the center of decision-making. His influence has long operated in the background, within the inner circles closest to power. As noted in analyses from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, power in Iran is not measured by visibility, but by proximity to networks of influence. This is where the real question begins. Are these events disconnected outcomes of conflict, or part of a traceable pattern? When we widen the lens, it becomes clear that developments inside Iran cannot be separated from broader regional shifts. During the same period, key allies began to lose ground. From Hezbollah, long considered a central pillar of deterrence, to the Syrian system under Bashar al-Assad, which for years provided strategic depth for Tehran. This does not necessarily signal collapse, but it does indicate a shift in weight and influence within the regional landscape. This perspective aligns with work such as the Shia Crescent, which describes Iranian influence as a flexible regional network rather than a fixed structure. When external shifts occur alongside internal changes, it becomes difficult to ignore the possibility of a broader restructuring. This is where real investigative thinking begins. The goal is not to find a single answer, but to identify a pattern. To connect timing, compare outcomes, and track what changes and what remains. In this type of analysis, evidence is not always direct, but repetition itself becomes a signal. Is it possible that different actors, both internal and external, pursue their own objectives without direct coordination, yet arrive at the same outcome? Each side moves according to its own interests, yet the trajectory leads to a similar result, the reshaping of power centers within the system. This does not necessarily imply hidden coordination, but it introduces a more complex idea. Systems do not evolve only through internal decisions, but under continuous pressure from their surrounding environment. At the same time, there is a simpler interpretation. One that views these developments as a natural outcome of a prolonged and ongoing conflict, where the most influential figures are targeted regardless of their role in succession dynamics. From this perspective, connecting these events may be overstated, and each incident may carry its own distinct context. Yet between these two interpretations, one conclusion remains clear. The landscape has changed, and the balance of power is being redefined. In moments like this, the truth is not found in headlines, but in the details. In who disappeared, who remained, and whose name is now appearing more frequently than before. The question is no longer what happened, but who truly holds power inside Iran today. And whether what we see is the full picture, or only part of it. And if the process is not yet complete, then who is being quietly positioned for what comes next? And ultimately, whether this is simply conflict unfolding, or a gradual redrawing of an entire system.